Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror, the podcast. I'm your host, Kevin L. Powers. I'm also the owner operator of Something Wicked Entertainment and Events, and I want to welcome you to our program today. So, I really hope that you have been with us over the last few years as we've delved deep into a lot of different types of horror films from a lot of different subgenres, from a lot of different decades, because we have done a tremendous job, in my opinion, touching upon a lot of those films except for more contemporary films, which is what we're going to be doing today. Now, if you have been listening to the program, what we do is we take an individual film and we talk and have a conversation, critique, analyze an individual film, so that we can go into the nuts and bolts, the nitty gritty, talk about this film in particular, and then a special guest is going to assist me with this. This one's going to be a really interesting one because not only is this a contemporary horror film, which we don't really do that often, but it is also a horror film based on a video game, which I have not been up to date with in quite some time. So I'm really excited to be talking about this film with the amazing Philip Ray, who was our special guest today. Thank you, Philip, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And we are going to discuss the movie Until Dawn, which came out in 2025. Now, I know what you're all saying. This is based on a video game, but I have never played the video game and knew nothing about it before seeing the movie. But, Philip, tell us a little bit about your background with this.
So I have played the video game. And good news for people who have not played the video game, you don't need to play the video game to watch the movie. They decided, which I am actually on, I favor actually the idea of doing their own thing. There is references throughout the movie about the video game, but generally they aimed to do their own thing and stuff. And that already for fans of the game, that might be immediately a turn off for them of not wanting to see the movie, which is understandable. Until Dawn, though, is a game that, again, it's really to a point its own, like it's kind of a movie. It's an interactive movie. And they did a remaster around the time that they announced and did the movie. So it really is felt like, okay, well, if you want a beat for beat remake, then just go play the game.
Like I've told everybody, I've not played the game, so I came in to this film a very more like a video game Until Dawn virgin, so to speak. I had seen the trailer for the movie, but I had not gone to the movie to go see this film, unfortunately. And when it came out, I remember it like I think it did well the first week, but kind of disappeared really fast. And so I didn't catch it until it went to streaming. And then that's how I came upon it. But I didn't like the concept of it. Now I don't know how much of the concept is in the video game, but I like the concept of this being like a horror version of Groundhog Day, where the main characters are reliving the same day over and over and over again. I
Oh,
did really like that aspect of the movie. Go ahead.
yeah, that's completely made up for
Oh,
the movie. Yeah. So the video game is basically it's about these teenagers who like very small remnants of the game and movie or similar. So it is about this group who go back to this cabin after one of the sisters, kind of similar like in the movie too, of like the sister of one of the characters in the group went missing. Different there's some different characters, and you've got Rami Malek as the brother who is out seeking revenge a little bit to prank everyone in the video game about, because they're kind of responsible for why the sister went missing, but it's mostly a hosh. There's a lot of, it's more of a fake outs.
mm.
You think the story's going to be about a serial killer. It's not. It's actually about the Wendigos, and then it becomes the stereotypical slasher type deal. Way the video game works is that, again, it's kind of a point and click kind of game. So your actions can either kill characters or you can make them live. depending on the actions you take and how good you are with quick time events. And that's basically the game. So yeah, in the movie, yeah, there's the whole concept of Groundhog's Day and all these different creatures. No, not in the game, other than the Wendigo, which is in the movie as well, in a not so good rendition, in my opinion.
First of all, I this is the first I've heard about the whole the one thing I did like about the film is not actually in the game, which is I like the fact that they all get gruesomely killed repeatedly. I thought was an interesting concept to build the story on. I do think that it may get repetitive in the film. I don't think it's nearly as fun as Happy Death Day. As like that's like the epitome of a perfect Groundhog Day horror film. And this one does it interestingly, but I think this one builds mostly on jump scares. So if you are a big fan of jump scares, or not a big fan of jump scares, depends on how you look at it. This film will be definitely be for you because that's what a lot of this movie is. Um,
So
and
the biggest disappointment with the movie is the thing is like I remember from the trailers when they showed, oh, there's going to be these different creatures and stuff. The movie tries to be a mixture of Groundhog's Day and Cabin in the Woods.
mm,
There's a lot of like they're wanting to put in a hodgepodge of different creatures, different things, you know. And unfortunately, the best part of the movie, at least in my opinion, I'll see what you think about Kevin, is that they kind of do a montage a little bit. So the general plot of the movie is similar to the game, a little bit of characters are trying to find the missing sister of one of the group members. They try to track them down to this town where she disappeared. The sister disappeared, and they suddenly discovered in a Groundhog's Day situation where every night they get killed, and they rinse and repeat, and then they discover that if they don't break the loop at some point, they will become monsters themselves. So, which is a neat idea. I think the best part of the movie though is when they kind of do a montage eventually of like these different horror scenarios, kind of a little bit of a like a cabin in the woods scenario, and that's the most interesting part. And they montage it. Like there's so many quick, like, whoa, 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 that creature looked cool. I want to see more of that. And it's like, nope, that was the 5 minutes we gave to it or less.
I do, yeah, I do recall that sequence there. And I hadn't thought of it like Cabin in the Woods. Uh, which when I rewatch it, I'll have to think about that. I have to repurpose my thought process on that because I have not played the video game, so I didn't know the creatures in there eventually because they don't show up. First of all, first thing you see is like the mask serial killer uh characters or what you first see in the movie. And just like in Cabin in the Woods, where they start off with zombies, but then it progresses to other monsters. This one does that too, but until you mention that the creatures that eventually show up or their version of a Wendigo, I would have never thought about that at all. I don't I even though I do like the aspects of the jump scares for this film because they work for the type of film this film is not nearly as like memorable as a lot of other horror films because it doesn't take the time to make any of the characters all that interesting. And so
It Yeah, it definitely has that problem. The thing with the Wendigo specifically is, and we kind of talked about a little bit this off mic, is when the people who are familiar enough with the Wendigo, the way in the game they do a better rendition of the Wendigo, at least explanation wise, of how people are becoming Wendigos. In this, it doesn't make sense. It's just kind of like they're doing it because it's in the video game more than actually like making logical sense of how you incorporate the Wendigo into this story.
mm, yeah. Well, because you have me now thinking about why this movie does what it does because if I'm trying to figure out the purpose of the whole Groundhog Day thing, when in reality, most of the characters just die, and it repeats, and why Dr. Hill, who is our antagonist, doesn't just allow them all to die. Like, I'm not what get me. What is his purpose? What I mean, why is this experiment something he's experimenting on, and he keeps repeating it with more and more different people who we claim are disappearing because we see the big bulletin board with all the missing people who have gone through this town before. Um,
So, so everything with Dr. Hill again is he is in the game, but it is done completely different.
okay,
Dr. Hill in the game is basically the kind of avatar. It's a think of the Crypt Keeper,
yeah,
a little bit of like like when and they're Crypt Keepers telling a story and they're doing the story and then they'll cut back the Crypt Keeper in the middle of the story and he'll say whatever. It's kind of what Dr. Hill functions like in the video game, where like after a chapter is done, you go back to Dr. Hill and he basically lectures the player about some of the choices they made and stuff, and like if that was a good choice or not and stuff. And that's what Dr. Hill functionality wise is like in the game. They tried to change that here, and I think, like you said, it's kind of confusing. And again, it's one of those things of like they do again, like there's a lot of this is one of those movies I think got a little worse because they cut a lot. The movie's an hour and a half, and there's a lot of you can look it up on YouTube and stuff. There's a lot of alternate endings and alternate cuts. So originally there was a werewolf that was going to be in this. And they actually like you can find it online and it looks good. They even reference the fact that werewolf being a one of the monsters to attack them, but then they never did. And that's because they cut it. And it actually is a good sequence and stuff. But the ending they also changed with that because Hill actually gets more explanation of his motivation in the alternate cut than in the theatrical cut.
yeah. So when I rewatched the film, I had a problem with the Dr. Hill character because I couldn't figure out what his motivation for this whole experiment was. And then of course I couldn't figure out why he would actually drink anything at this town when he knows that by drinking water at all it's going to make everyone explode. So when I rewatched it, I couldn't buy the concept that, oh, I have a cup of coffee here that's made out of water, and so like that he carried this all from the real town. There was a lot of things that bugged me the second time I watched the movie that didn't bug me the first time I watched it, because simply when I originally watched this film, when it started streaming, I was watching it simply because it was a horror film I hadn't seen, and so I was going in with low expectations. Really, I just like the concept of them, like the Groundhog Day. And you're right, they didn't show the interesting ones for us. We just saw those in the montage. But the Dr. Hill thing was just bugging me, and it's still bugging me. Um,
Yeah, I think watch the alternate cut on YouTube. I think you would be very annoyed because it's better because I it's a nice gotcha moment what they do with Hill and his coffee. But like you said, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense and it doesn't do great on repeat viewings versus in the alternate cut, it ends traditionally like a lot of horror movies. You've got your main heroine versus the baddie, and she overcomes and kills. Because Hill even mentions when he is getting killed that it's like, I'm immortal essentially. Like he has his Five Nights at Freddy moment of I'll always come back. Like, and that explains better at the end with which again for Kevin you probably didn't pick up, but for the video game people, the ending when he looks at a cabin and you're seeing these people go into this cabin at the end, that was directly referencing the video game
hmm.
with the implication of now the events of the video game are going to happen next. Again, doesn't make a whole lot of sense with the context of the theatrical cut. It makes somewhat more sense with the alternate cut, but also again, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And it really felt it's the same idea like with the Wendigo of it felt like we need to have some references in the game, so let's put these characters here, even though it doesn't make any sense.
Mm. Yeah,
Even the mass killer, for example,
yeah,
that also is in the game, but that's a fake out. Like you think there's a mass killer, but then it's revealed it's Wendigos and stuff. But the look is exactly from the game and stuff. But in the movie, it's just a slasher, which is fine. But like again, that's another like, oh look, it's from the game.
yeah. So so as much as I want to talk about Dr. Hill, um, I do want to go back to some of the stuff that's in the film for especially for the people who may not are not like me are not familiar with all of the game mechanics of the film. And I want to go back and see if the film actually achieves what it set out to achieve. Now, the Clover character, that's our main character because we haven't mentioned the names of the characters. Clover, Max, Nina, and Megan. I think no,
And Abe.
Megan's the sister, right? Who's the
Yes.
sister? Yeah, no, Megan's not the sister. Megan is
It's the
psychic one.
stepsister. Melanie is the
Melanie.
Melanie is the missing character.
Okay, so I wanted to get those out the way because Clover is obviously the one we are seeing as the main character, despite the fact that, in all honesty, this is more without the gore, this would be a PG-13 film. uh, but these friends are like this is not in the video game, but in these friends are all helping Clover search for her missing sister, or also trying to give her closure to the fact that she's been missing for a year. And when they get to the town, what's the town called? I had it written down.
Uh, it is called
I don't remember the town. But
Gl I don't think they gave it a name.
that we see a sign with the date.
Glor Valley.
Yeah. So when they get there, um, Clover is all about trying to find her sister, and it's her driving force in the entire film. The other characters don't really have much of a driving force other than helping their friend. But as the multiple nights go on, we see them reacting differently because each time they die, they're not only changing, but they're also their ideals are changing. Like was it Max? Max is Nina's or is it Abe? No,
Abe.
Abe. Abe is the one who's the new to the group. See the names are interchangeable because they don't make the characters defined enough in the film. So Abe is the one who's just new to the group and he has no like connections to most of these people other than his girlfriend at the time. And he thinks he can just leave them behind, but there is this sense of familiarity with the other characters that they won't leave each other behind. Now, if this was your typical horror film and they're each getting killed permanently, you wouldn't have that type of mentality in the film. But it's something that grows as the film goes on. I actually do like that aspect because by the end of the film or the third act, you have Clover saving Megan, who repeatedly disappears and gets captured or something like that. So I like that aspect of the film. That I do it doesn't work. I think it works well in this film because there's only five characters and they get killed but then they get brought back again. It's not like your typical slasher movie where they get killed and then we don't see them again for the rest of the movie. They're dead. These guys, these ladies and these guys get killed and then we see them come back and then they each start to deteriorate physically and mentally as we're watching it. And I like some of those things I do like for the film, despite the fact that the characters are kind of two-dimensional, except for Clover, and even she doesn't have that much going for her, really.
See, my problem, one of my problems with the cast is I think I don't blame any of the actors. It's what they were given. But like you said, they are very forgettable. They're all kind of interchangeable. Like the thing is, so Clover's, so we got Clover, who's the main girl. We've got Max, who is the ex-boyfriend slash still, has a crush on her. You've got Nina, who is just the best friend character, who's kind of the pothead. And then you have her boyfriend, who is the new person there, and then you've got Megan, who is the stepsister of the guy who has a crush on Clover. And yeah, and it's just kind of like that's all over the place. And the problem is a lot of the characterization, it's one of those movies where they're like, oh, they're all friends, but you don't really see that. It's one of those things of, oh, aren't we all good friends? But you don't actually feel that way for a lot of them. You don't feel like they're really friends. And that was a problem. And so for me, like, I thought a lot of the writings for some of the characters were bad. I think the writing for Abe is bad, not in the sense of the way he acts, but the way he gets treated. He kind of gets treated as like the villain at times because he, like you said,
Yeah.
he's the one who is like, oh, I need to get out of here. Although again, like it's not just, oh, I want to get out of here. He's also trying to get Nina,
Yes.
his girlfriend, out as well, and like, hey, we need to get out of here. And she's like, no, you can't. You don't understand. He is the rational character in the movie of the group of like, hey, we should probably get out of here. Oh, hey, maybe we shouldn't do that, or maybe we shouldn't try to kill ourselves. Like he's the voice of reason, but the movie doesn't treat him as the voice of reason.
No.
They treat him as the antagonist, which bothered the crap out of me watching the movie.
Well, it also bothers you that, excuse me, by the third act when they've gone through this process 13 times, which is the magic 13 number. He's the only one where he acts he we see his back and he's obviously changing by that 13th time, but we don't see any of the other characters really physically changing as much as he has. And
Yeah.
they don't tell him. They don't. They it was like, oh, we're not going to tell you. uh,
And the thing too is again, like with a lot of stuff cut, Abe had a lot of backstory that got cut
uh,
out. That a little explained a little bit more of why he's very much like we need to go because there's a moment he gets basically betrayed by one of the other characters, which and he explains why he is like he's dying and he explains why he's acting the way he's acting and it gives a lot of depth to the character, so of course they had to cut it for no reason at all. um
they keep it
but again it's
aside.
like it's like I feel bad for Abe because he's the only one thinking sense. A lot of the other characters, again, they go on the oh no man left behind type deal, but again, you don't feel connected enough. You don't feel them or they don't feel like they're actual friends where you feel that way. They all feel like stereotypes a lot of
Yeah.
the time.
No, I don't agree. I don't disagree with you with that. I think also making Clover so obsessed with finding her sister also distances her from the rest of her group. Um, because
But
every corner she's seeing her sister or a version of her sister or the changed version of her sister. Um, and then of course,
which which is fine, but that's her only character defining thing. And then again, the Max character, everyone has their one character defining thing, and that's really it. The Megan character is, I mean, you talk about what do you even do? She's the arbitrary character who is somehow is gets in touch, like she's the mystical one.
yeah,
Which makes no sense because she's not given that context as a mystical character before the action begins. It's not like she's the character she does like um she goes at home and does witchcraft and stuff. So her being the one who is the mystical character comes out left field and only feels like they did that because she's the only like non-white character there. I mean
yeah.
there is like Abe is also I think he's uh Hispanic uh and stuff, but like it really feels like, oh, we need a mystic character. Let's make the Asian character be the mystic character because that is usually an old, the old school 80s horror movie. That's what they would do.
Yeah, I will. You just brought up something I almost forgotten. Between the Wendigos and the slasher killers, there's also the witches in the movie as well. Because the thing about the movie that gets me is that they want to have all these different monsters, but the monsters don't necessarily all look all that different from a normal monster. And I think that's something that the video game probably did a much better job with, since we've been talking and discussing the Wendigos. And I
Yeah,
think,
because again, like the Wendigos are the main antagonists, and there's no witches in the video game. It's just they do the fake out with, oh, there's a serial killer, to nope, the main thing is the Wendigos, and that is the main focus and the main thing they're avoiding. The problem I think with this movie with that is they wanted to do this concept of doing this Groundhog's Day, but with a different horror aspect coming at them. You get the serial killer, you got the witches, you've got the Wendigo because of the video game. You've got again like they go through a whole montage of other
mhm,
different creatures and stuff. And the problem is that but you don't understand why.
yeah,
With Cabin in the Woods, they explained what happened. Again, there are certain triggers, so oh, this leads up to the unicorn. This leads up to
mhm.
the zombies. This leads up to. There's no explanation in the movie of why that happens. Like, they don't explain why every night they switch to a different creature, other than, again, they just wanted to do it for the concept. It's the elevator pitch, but you never understand why it even happens.
No, I agree with that. I thought that that was one of the issues I had with the film upon my rewatch. I was like, well, they just changed the monsters each time, but what does changing each of the monsters actually does with the overall plot and ideals behind what the film is trying to say? And I couldn't figure that out. I
And it'd be different too if they stay consistent. But again, the Wendigos stay consistent. Like the Wendigos, again, if they don't get out of the loop, they become a Wendigo. And the problem is the Wendigo, it actively appears throughout the all the nights. And same thing with the serial killer guy. He makes multiple appearances in the
Mhm.
other nights past his original killing night. So it's like so why do these characters get to pop up in multiple nights, but then these only appear on one night and then they disappear?
Yeah. I mean, there is the one night where obviously they drink the water and that destroys them.
Which is a great moment that, like, I will say, they do have some moments of comedy. That was probably everything related to the water is probably the best part of the movie. When I saw it in theaters, it got the most laughs. The first time they had the discovery of the water, and then once they know it, and then they use that later on, that got the most laughs out of everyone watching it and stuff. And that is probably the best moment in the movie because it does catch you completely off guard when it happens.
Oh my God. Yes, you are absolutely right. And it catches you off guard even when so I'm gonna mention the one star of the movie in my opinion, which is Peter Stormare. Because I love that character actor. And even though this is one of his lesser roles, and I'm gonna say that, it's one of his lesser roles, it's still fun to see him on screen chewing scenery. I do think it's really odd that Dr. Hill is at the gas station at the very beginning, as though he just works there, and then only leaves there when he has a new test subject. Um,
Yeah, it when I first saw him, I was like, oh, okay, there's the cameo and stuff, and then it was like, oh no, we're making him the bad guy, and it's like, but he wasn't really the bad guy in the game. That's kind of a weird, like it's one of those weird things when you have Hill be the main antagonist. It's just it feels like they're trying to kind of put a bow into, all right, here is where the character, this is the main thing they're dealing with, which again, in the video game, it was the Wendigos. It's like any other horror movie. There is a creature, there's one thing you're trying to get rid of, trying to overcome. So when you add Hill as like the mastermind, but you don't really even understand it, why he's even doing what he's doing, because it's like, and how he has any control of any of this stuff. And then again, at the end, when it's like, but somehow he's immortal
Yeah.
now with it, it doesn't add up.
No, because I try and figure out the sense of there's so many missing people there, and how long this has been going on versus, what his goal with the experiment is. And I wasn't paying enough attention the first time I watched the movie to do all that. I simply was watching it for the entertainment value of it. But when I rewatched it, all those little holes started showing their face to me, and I didn't enjoy it as much as I did the first time I saw the movie.
Yeah. It definitely does not do well on multiple viewings. I will give them credit on the attempt to do something new of like, no, I get like, I know some people are mad of like, oh, it doesn't feel like Until Dawn and stuff. I'm okay with doing something different because it is like, well, why don't I just play the video game if I wanted a shot for shot? So I give them credit for trying something new. And the concept on paper seems like an interesting idea. You take Groundhog's Day and Cabin in the Woods and stuff. I think the execution is not good. And that's why when I look at all these alternate cuts that happen and stuff, I think a lot of it comes into studio interference probably, or different producers giving different notes and stuff, because it's like, again, you have a werewolf, you hint the werewolf, you film it and it looks good. Why would you cut it? Like it's such a weird thing to cut of like you think of famous creatures that come after someone, you would put a werewolf in that category. So the fact that they cut the werewolf but kept the Wendigo because the video game and stuff, it was just very weird.
Yeah, it would be interesting because I did not think of or read about any of the cuts and the post-production process of this film. And I can hazard that because it's a video game adaptation, that there are probably a lot of cuts made to a lot of video game adapted films, or a lot of what do you call it? Hand holding with
Yeah.
the IP owner. Uh but this film, from what you're telling me, is very removed from any original source material. So I kind of wonder how much was studio interference versus how much was, okay, we really like the game, but we just want to change the game. Um, and how
I
much,
know the director came out and said like he was like, I did not want to do a shot for shot. I wanted to do something new with the IP, which that's fair. I'm like, sure, if you want to go that route and stuff. It's just the nuggets of Easter eggs gets kind of annoying, especially when if you're going to do it, it needs to be weaved naturally into the story, not like, oh, look at the mass killer. It looks like the guy from the game, even though that's not how it worked in the game. Oh, we're gonna bring the Wendigo in because that was the main like antagonist for the video games. Except we're not going to use it canonically of how the Wendigo is functionality wise. Oh, we've got Hill. Oh, let's have him be the main antagonist because he's a prominent face and it's Peter Stormare, who's a well-known name. So let's just have him be the antagonist.
so the reason why I'm bringing all this up is because I want to make mention of a lot of video game adaptations in which the filmmakers took seeds of the original game and concept, but then extrapolated their own stories. The most famous being the Resident Evil franchise. Now, I by the time the first movie came out, I still have never played any of the games. By the time the third and fourth movie came out, I had played Resident Evil 5. Um, And I love the first Resident Evil movie. I thought that was a really effective movie in terms of the haunted house aspects and what they brought to it. I think that for me, the first film, the story made sense for the most part. Here, it's like they had a lot of cool ideals and they didn't like connect the dots with them all. And I'm gonna reference two other ones which are also infamously bad, which is Yui Bowl's House of the Dead and Alone in the Dark, two other video games that were butchered by the filmmaker who decided to do his own thing. So the reason why I bring this up is I'm trying to figure out whether or not when we're watching these films based on video games, especially for this episode, is it good to venture off on your own ideals, or should filmmakers more respect the source material? Because this film veers so much from it, the source material, but as you were saying, it tries to bring certain aspects of the video game in, but was it successful? Is it successful for the film? Because we know that it's not successful for the video game fans.
Yeah, because the thing is, at the end of the day, I think when you are doing these adaptations, right, is do how well does it make you want to go, oh, I want to play the video game? You know, a great example is for TV shows, the Arcane. Arcane is a adaptation of League of Legends, and that was probably one of the most well-famous video game adaptations where people were like, "Oh, this is great. I want to play a video game that's in this world and stuff." Even though it is completely different. They are completely different. They just took characters and ideas, but they expanded upon to an original story and stuff.
Mhm.
I think Until Dawn could have done that, but I think the issue I think Until Dawn does with it is that it tries to unnaturally weave the story elements to the video game into it. I think another example, like the Devil May Cry TV show that came out on Netflix recently,
Still have to see that one.
Castlevania is very well famous about that. Of again, stuff like that where it's like, okay, if you're going to take this stuff, and you want to do original stuff, that's fine, but you need to, if you're going to reference items and elements of the game, you need to weave it naturally. Like a good example of a bad weaving is Doom, the Doom
Oh,
video game with uh Dwayne The Rock Johnson and freaking
Carl Urban.
uh Carl Urban and stuff. And the moment in the movie where it literally becomes a video game, which is a great sequence, but it makes no sense for the story. And why do they do it? Because it's so people watch and be like, "Oh, that's like the video game." But no one's watching that and was like, "Oh, this makes me want to play the video game." It doesn't. And that's the thing with this movie Until Dawn is it doesn't really make you want, like, I can tell you, Kevin, I don't think you were like after like, "Oh man, I kind of want to play the video game of this."
No. I think the only video game film that I wanted to do that with was the Resident Evil. Hence why I played two or three of the Resident Evil games after I'd seen the movies. I do want to play Silent Hill afterwards. I did want to play that one because I love the first movie and I thought that was just a cool fucking concept. I don't know how well the first movie plays towards the game. But yeah, Silent Hill would be the other one. But you're right.
Yeah.
You know, I played I played games like Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter and was not satisfied with the movies as a gamer back then. So I always want to ask that question because I think the biggest question as filmmakers doing video game adaptations are because the source material isn't like a novel, it's not so straightforward. How much of the original game and story and concept do you implement when you make it into a film, which has to have a linear story and be streamlined for people who don't play video games?
I think a lot of it comes into um the element of the story itself. Like I say another two good video game film adaptations is Detective Pikachu and Sonic the Hedgehog. Both of those, and Sonic the Hedgehog did like again did originally its own like stereotypical like very generic story and stuff, but they did enough. With adaptations, there's always that middle ground of appeasing the fans and appealing to the general audience, and it's a very tight rope. And I think a lot of people just cannot do it. I think a lot of times they get very in their own brain of, well, we need to put references all over the here. Even if it doesn't make sense, we need to have that Star Wars moment of, oh, I remember this from the game. And when you do that, it doesn't do well. Five Nights at Freddy's is a great example with that of like it's trying to appeal too much to video game people. Actually a better example is Borderlands. Borderlands was a great example of a game where they tried so hard to visually look like the video game, but they were like, well, we need to change things and stuff. But then things they changed alienated the video game fans who are like, you've changed stuff that doesn't make sense to change, so now they hate it, but then they didn't change enough of it to appeal to a general audience, so no one knew what to do with that. And I think that happens a lot with these video game adaptations is they try too hard to either A, appeal to the video game people and then alienate the general audience, or B, do too much for the general audience and then alienate your video game fans.
Hmm. No, I'm not going to disagree with you on it, but that's one of the questions I want to put towards us, because that is one of the key elements when we as horror fans are watching these video game adapted films. I do believe that a huge portion of us as horror fans, horror film lovers, also play horror games. So seeing these games that we call part of our culture adapted as films, I think a lot more people in the horror genre, myself excluded since I don't play video games, would rather see these horror films more closely implement the video game than to be something that's completely not um faithful to the adaptation. Um
I think like with this, if they wanted to do their own thing with the Until Dawn stuff, I would say a better way to write the script would have been to have the Wendigo be one of the creatures of the night, not have it be one of these overarching things of, oh, if you don't do this, you become a Wendigo. Have the Wendigo be one of the creatures to do of the night. You focus more on that. Dr. Hill I would have him be more of how he is in the game of advising the characters about what to do and less antagonistic, and just the real antagonistic side of things is the situation they're in. I think a lot of times, sometimes screenwriters will want to put a face for whatever the obstacle is instead of the situation being the obstacle. And I would think with this movie, the time loop is more of the obstacle than the secret mastermind.
mhm. Yep. No, I agree with you. But like I said, that's one of the questions I want to put forth towards you and to everyone who's listening, because that really does get into the heart. I don't think have we done a video game adaptation yet? I think
No, I think this is our first one.
yeah, I think this is our first one. So I haven't been able to bring this question up yet. But for everyone listening, we do plan on doing other video games real soon, especially the Resident Evil and Silent Hill films. I'll have to put Doom on there. I had completely forgot about that one.
And we can do Five Nights at Freddy's and have angry comments from that.
It's funny because as horror fans, it's only been within the last few decades where we're seeing these uh video games being adapted as films. Before then, we had the really bad adaptations of stuff like Van Damme Street Fighter, the original Mortal Kombat films, the original Super Mario Brothers films, and a plethora of other films that people have completely forgot about because they were bad. Like, and those all were films that were not trying to be like the game. They were more or less trying to take the concept and do their own thing. No one is talking about the original Super Mario Brothers movie. I know there are some people out there who say it's a cult movie. It is not a cult movie. It is a bad movie. It might be a guilty pleasure movie, but it is just plain fucking bad. But we as horror fans, I think because of the success of Resident Evil franchise, which is one of the biggest money making video game adaptations worldwide, not domestic. Those movies made a shit ton more money overseas than they ever did here. And which is why there's what, 6, 7 fucking movies, not including the animated movies, and a new one coming out this year. I like to think that there is room for both doing a faithful adaptation and the adaptation that takes the general concepts and make them better or extrapolate from them. I think there's room for both. I think
I think so too. It just comes into writing. It comes into
yes.
is a good script, and I think sometimes there is not. I think there's not a good script sometimes with some of the stuff, because you look at Sonic the Hedgehog, which is script. If you look at it on paper, should be a terrible movie.
It should.
And it deviates so much from the source material. But the fact that the script actually, and with the actors, is good enough to actually excel to make it actually a decent video game adaptation that's had multiple things. But then you have something like Uncharted that came out and stuff. And again, like that, and you do something like that tried to be a lot like the source material, but also not really. And it felt, and was in development hell for so long. And at the end of the day, it really felt like, it feels like, we're just doing like a vehicle for Tom Holland and stuff. It just, it's just, the Prince of Persia one where they decided, all right, we're gonna do a video game in Egypt where the setting's Egypt, and we're going to not cast an Egyptian for the main character, and we're gonna cast Gyllenhaal as and most of the cast and be not Egyptian and stuff. It's just like,
oh shit, I had forgotten about that one, dude.
yeah. Again, I think there are ways to do these right. I think it's just, again, they get too. I think like one thing, like I'll go with Sonic and Detective Pikachu are good examples of. I think it's good when they do it and they don't do the member berries. They don't try to be like, oh, remember this, remember that. They're just telling a story, and if there's a way to weave elements of the video game in, great. But that is not needed. It is, again, Arcane is a good example, is one of the better examples of, you can watch Arcane and never play League of Legends, and you would not feel lost at all. There's not a moment where you're like, I don't understand what that is. And then someone who played video games is like, oh, well, you see what that is a reference to. Again, I think that's a trope a lot of these video game adaptations does, and Until Dawn does it, where they go, we want people to be like, oh, I remember this from the video game, and not care how they got there in the first place.
Yeah. I agree with you on that one. And that's mostly on the second watch, where I was like, how the hell is all these story elements connect? Because I could not figure it out to save my life. But it's really odd for me because the first time I watched it, streaming at night, I was just chilling. I was like, oh, good. It finally came out. I can finally watch this. I sat down and enjoyed the hell out of it, because it is it plays towards those common denominator common denominator tropes of a typical horror teen movie. It plays those tropes so well that you kind of accidentally glance over some of the logic and some of the video game aspects if you've never seen the video game or played the video game. Um, and I think that does a disservice to the video game and the video game fans. And I think it does a disservice to the people watching the movie when half the ideals you don't understand because they didn't bother to take the time and effort to extrapolate and explain them. Instead, they want to have a lot of cool shit in the movie that kind of distract you from the plot holes and the stuff that they didn't bother to figure out before making the movie. That's what
Again, yeah, because you look at like I keep harping on the Wendigo, but that's I mean I think everyone's that's the most like when you look at the Wendigo in the first of all like design wise it just looks like a zombie. I think
yeah,
Kevin, you were the one off camera, off mic was talking about that of like when you first saw it, it's like it looked like a zombie, and it's like
yeah, it just looks
yeah,
like
it looks like a zombie. It doesn't make you think Wendigo. And for audience members who do not know the generalization of the Wendigo, it is typically associated with Native American stuff, but it is a creature that is usually a human who has eaten other humans. They've done cannibalism and they slowly become a creature by doing that. That is the most common origins of the Wendigo. And in the video game, that is a story plot about the reason that there are Wendigos around is because there are people that did cannibalism and they became Wendigo.
yeah. I
They
mean,
don't do that in this game. I mean, in the movie, they don't do that in the movie. They turn into Wendigo because they just turn into a Wendigo. There is no, oh, well, they ate people and that's why they're turning. No, they just turn into a Wendigo because that was in the game.
yeah.
And if you're an audience member who does not know anything, you're just thinking, well, that's kind of random.
Well, I will talking about movies that do this a little bit better in terms of the Wendigo. Obviously, we're gonna pick on the movie Wendigo, but also the more recent film Antlers, which does it a whole hell of a lot better, or Ravenous
Mhm.
also does it the concept better. The people don't change, but they kind of get the powers by eating the flesh of other people, and so that ideal is still there. For me, when I watched this, I didn't get Wendigo at all. And like I said, I got like some weird little zombie thing, and of course, you had to explain to me that there were Wendigos because I didn't play the video game, so I had no reference for that. I didn't.
Yeah, you don't understand. If you know anything about the Wendigos, you don't understand why the characters are turning into Wendigos. You have to have literally someone who's played the video game tell you, oh, because Wendigos are the main antagonists for the video game. And then that is why they put the Wendigo in
I would have just stuck with the design for the video game. At least that would have been that would
Yeah,
have.
and that's the thing is
Go ahead.
the design was great.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So for
The
everyone
design for the
listening,
video game is so good.
yeah, yeah, I will agree with you on that. For everyone listening, prior to recording the episode, Philip did show me what the video game Wendigo looks like versus what it is in the movie, and I was like, oh shit, they should have just used the fucking video game version. I would have kind of picked up on that a little bit faster had it been that. But when I'm watching the movie more recently, it was like, they just look like zombie monster characters to me. I don't know. Oh shit. So, Philip, is there something that we have skipped or did not talk about in regards to the movie? Because one of the great things about this conversation is we talked a lot about video game adaptations and how it plays with horror fans, which is a conversation we have not had the chance to do until now.
Yeah. I at the end of the day, Until Dawn, this kind of goes in the list with a lot of the other failed video game adaptations. I will give a compliment. I will give it credit for trying something different. I do give it credit for trying something different. I think the idea of the premise is good and stuff. I think again, it fell into a lot of tropes that the other video game adaptations have of trying too hard to incorporate elements from the original and not try to tell the story that they want to do and stuff, which is very disappointing. So at the end of the day, if you as a viewer are questioning, well, how should I digest this media? Play the video game. They had a remake come out, and they've confirmed they're doing another Until Dawn 2.
Oh,
So just play the video game. That is a stronger way to digest this story,
mm,
even though the stories are different.
interesting. Okay. Well, I want to thank you, Philip, for joining us on this conversation in horror, in which we were delving deep into Until Dawn. For everyone listening, what we love to do is we love to rate the movies, which means we put a scale of 1 to 5 out there. And then we like to pull something from the film, a object, a quote, or something to rate the movie by. Where on the spectrum, Philip, do you place this film, and what object, quote, or saying would you place it as?
I would do 3 out of 5 cut werewolves.
3 out of 5 cut werewolves. Okay. Oh, Jesus. Uh, you know what? Had I not rewatched the film and I was still going by my original interpretation of the film when I first saw it, I would have given it a 3. But now that I've had a chance to rewatch the film and really get pissed off at all the plot holes in terms of the Dr. Hill character, I'm only going to give it a 2.5 half-ass Wendigos, because I'm sorry, but my idea of what a Wendigo is, this film did not cover at all. So I'm just gonna call it a half-ass Wendigo. And even though it was Peter Stormare as the Dr. Hill, I still think that something doesn't click with how they portrayed the character in the film for me anymore. So that kind of ruins it for me. But that does not mean this is not an effective film. For those of you out there who love their jump scares, this movie has tons of jump scares in it. It will keep you entertained. You may not remember any of it after you've watched it, but that being said, it's a good time waster if you and your partner are sitting in the back in the comfort of your own home with the lights turned off, and you got a bowl of popcorn in between you that you're sharing, and you just want to have a good jump scare. This is a great movie to do it with. Similar to how I tell people to enjoy the movie The Nun and The Nun 2. Their movie has great jump scares, not much else, but they got some great jump scares, and they're effective in that regards. So with that, I want to thank you all for listening to us on Conversations in Horror, in which we discussed the movie Until Dawn from 2025. Our first video game adaptation. So we do hope that we will be doing more of these in the future. So we do hope that you will like, share, follow, subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode on your favorite podcast app, Spotify, or YouTube, because you never know what's going to be coming up in the future. And also make sure to check out our sister podcast, Conversations in Hammer Studio Horrors, which delves deep into Hammer Studio films from the 60s, 70s, and beyond. If you like classic horror films, you're going to love that one. That one is released every first and third Friday of the month at 8 a.m. So you are going to get a lot of great stuff throughout the month from here and all of us at Conversations in Horror and Broken Lighthouse Pictures. Please have a great day, and we will see you on the next episode. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, written, produced, and directed by Kevin L. Powers, executive producer Kelly A. Inoka. All contents and material from this episode of Conversations in Horror is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures.